Long time no see. Good to have everyone here today. Thank you for making the time to come on out and spend a little time with us. And you would think that a second signing day is a little bit anticlimactic, but it's not. It ends up being a really good start to the day. We were able to land the exact prospect we wanted at the exact position of need. And so for us, it's been an extremely exciting, just satisfying morning with the addition of Jamal Hill, DJ James, and Christian Williams. Certainly now recruiting on the other side of the country a little bit as well. A couple of things that we noticed throughout the process, of course, was that Oregon remains an extremely powerful national brand, and that certainly gave us the opportunity to make some inroads along with some networking, I would say, relationships in the SEC country due to some years of working over in that side of the world, and it ended up being for us. We feel it's a home run, so we're excited as can be. But that being said, open to questions.
Right here on the front right.
Mario, can you just elaborate on who that key player at a key position that made it not anticlimactic is, and what that'll do for you guys next year?
Well, even though guys commit in that between that first sign day and that second one, there is no national letter of intent that is signed. And being that these guys were in certain parts of the country where it's hard, it really is. It's hard to go into the Atlanta area and down to Mobile and those parts of the country where, several conferences recruit hard, but essentially that's SEC country. But, we needed a big, long, rangy, explosive safety. So it happens that Jamal, he's a documented 10-9 guy as a junior, early junior season, that could probably get down to 10-6 at just about 200 pounds and 6'2". So explosive, long, rangy, a ball hawk, great ball skills, extremely intelligent, great growth potential, great foot and body quickness, balance and body control. Lights up the room when you're around him and his family. Certainly just a joy to be around. So, again, to be able to go down there and knowing the list of opportunities that he had when he came up with his family, it wasn't the best weather day either. They caught us on a weekend where it's like, okay, I hope you really like it, because it was a rough one weather-wise. He was all about it, and not just the bells and whistles of the facility, but the people, the opportunity for development, opportunity for playing time, and the direction of the program. So it was great to get him on board. DJ James, 6-foot cover corner. We all know how hard it is to get those guys, and we live in a conference where the passing game for a lot of teams does reign supreme. And so with the long, rangy wide receivers that we have in this conference, with some of the more prolific passing games and offense that we have to face, to get a guy that can play man coverage while at the same time roll up there in zone and cover two and be able to slice and play support and get guys on the ground as a willing tackler. We find ourselves with a guy with elite twitch, elite hips and feet that can turn and cover and stay with some of the more elite, longer wide receiver types. Again, an awesome young man, just like Jamal. Just very similar families in that just have full family support and endorsement to come out here to Oregon after visiting and after spending some time with us during that period. So those are two huge targets. We wanted a safety, we wanted a corner. And then, of course, we wanted another defensive lineman. We wanted a true three technique, a guy that can change the game at the line of scrimmage. And Christian, he caught our eye at the end of the first recruiting cycle. And it was one of those why haven't we been on this guy earlier? But and I want to mention, Dante Williams, Keith Hayward, Joe Salavea, Bobby Williams, all these guys they poured into this part of the country and invested a gazillion hours to make it happen. Christian had everybody in the country, not everybody in the country, but everybody in that part of the country coming after him. And it made it tough. It made it very difficult for him to try to, figure out exactly what he wanted to do, what he wanted to be. But after spending time up here with Joe and some of our football players, just really felt a strong connection, saw opportunity, saw how people are genuine with him, and had a plan for him. So again, the power of the brand is strong, but all in all, just a tremendous day for us. Yet we had a chance to elevate the caliber of athlete that we have on our roster, and we did so with guys that, in this second recruiting cycle, we're at the top of our list. Guys that, you look at your process and you figure we have to continue to expand while staying on the West Coast when we have to, but also expand knowing that it is a national brand, and we could pull elite athletes this way from all parts of the country.
Back middle tight.
Having a year under your belt coaching in this conference now, do you find that changed how you went about the type of players that you target, just having that experience of knowing what works in this conference, what doesn't, or are you guys kind of going just whatever you kind of identify that works best for this program?
Well, I think that this conference has a lot of carryover from other ones. I know when you look at conferences, sometimes there are analyses out there that maybe skew the actual truth about it. Every conference has long, wide receivers and pretty good passing games. I think ours has a little bit more than most. I think that our conference needs to continue to add those big body types in the trenches to be able to withstand the rigors of the season with quality depth and powerful guys that could change the game at the line of scrimmage. I think we saw it the other night watching the Super Bowl, how that game could go one way or the other with the play at the line of scrimmage. And, of course, a couple plays being made on the back end, but it was tough sledding because of what was, being done up front. So the goal is still going to be the elite student-athlete, and we mean balance in that. It's got to be the right type of guy, right character, right kind of student, right athlete, but to increase the caliber and the level of guy that we bring into the program. And that's at every position. Length is at a premium. Explosiveness, football smarts, and IQ. Toughness can never, ever be compromised. Football is not getting easier, right? Schedules are getting tougher. The demands on the student athletes are more difficult. And, with a transfer portal out there now, it's easier to move on if things aren't exactly the way you like them. So you want tough-minded individuals that are goal-oriented and that want to buy into your vision, that have similar goals for themselves as you have for the football team, the football program. But I think that's important. I think it's important also to, when they're on campus, as well as when we're at their homes, to emphasize the things that are genuine and real. I don't, all the fluff that surrounds recruiting, we have fun with it. We do. We use social media sometimes and whatnot, but when we get down to it, when we sit down, we look at each other eye to eye, it's for real, and it has to be for real. The foundation of this whole thing can't be fluff, and it's not going to be fluff, and it's not going to be popular slogans or whatnot. It's just not going to be that way. I know a lot of people like that, and it makes it fun and exciting, but it's going to be based on the truths and the values and principles that can make our guys better people, future fathers, future husbands, and a championship football program.
All right, AJ.
Coach, obviously you can't know the unknowable, but this is a highly ranked class. How do you see it perhaps meshing in immediately next year with your needs for the 2019 season?
Yeah, AJ, that's a great question. I think it was kind of interesting because earlier I was asked something. I always had this statement in my head from Jimmy Johnson, my old ball coach. I remember they asked him, I was part of a class that was ranked pretty high. I was the lowest ranked guy, by the way, but the class itself was ranked pretty high. And they asked him, well, how do you feel about this highly ranked class? He goes, you could say what you want about the highly ranked class. I'm more concerned about how they play, So, but it just so happens that their ranking, and I'm talking about the services across the board, coincided with our feelings and our rankings as well. So we're happy about the way it was portrayed and whatnot. And as far as the guys coming in, we do exactly what we did with our mid-year enrollees. The first thing that has to happen is that the older guys, and we actually assign mentors to the younger guys, is the older guys have to embrace the younger guys, understand that we must create the right type of competition within the program. And competition is not a threat. Competition is a way to elevate a program. So the older guys have to embrace the young guys, and the young guys have to embrace the culture. It's a two-way street. This thing has to come together. And the only way to do that is by, and I've used this line before, you got to take a deep dive into each other. You got to get to know each other. You got to get to understand where you're from, what's the mindset. And that's the only way that you're able to really invest more in each other and want to do right by each other. So that is the process. It really is. It's a give and a take, but we got to meet each other halfway. And we're very clear about that and transparent about that in the process. So we expect the transitions to continue to get smoother and smoother and smoother.
On the right, back there, Austin.
Mario, following up on Tyson's question, you mentioned the need for Pac-12 teams to get more of those big bodies on the line of scrimmage.
Yes,
having recruited in SEC country and now a couple years on the West Coast, are there enough of those guys to go around on the West Coast, or are those the kind of players maybe you are going out of your region to try to sign?
I think there are at times. I mean, I think you look at I'm just going to refer to recent, well, not even recent, but you look at guys like Shane Lemieux and Calvin Throckmorton. I mean, those guys are those guys are giants, you know. And then you fast forward to, you know, even Brady Aiello. Brady's exactly what you look for, a guy that's lean at 245 pounds, and now he's 320 pounds. And you look at guys like Panay, where, you know, he's 348 in moon pounds, where there's no gravity, you know, and guys like Stephen Jones that look like grizzly bears when they come out of the dormitory. So I think there are enough. You know, the honest truth, the defensive tackles have been a little bit harder to mine, you know, to find. And if we treat that position like we would treat a quarterback, where we would go anywhere nationally or internationally as well. You know, we almost went to Germany this year. Bobby Williams was really excited about that trip when it came up. It was to have to fly for 16 hours or whatever it is. But no, I'm with you. You got to seek them out, and I think we're going to continue. I know we're going to continue to use our relationships in certain parts of the country to find. The Midwest is, you know, known for it as well, line of scrimmage guys. But I do think if you know what you'd hate to do, you'd hate to fly over some really good ones because you didn't cultivate your West Coast area enough to find one that you could have found right across the way, you know. So I think that, and also, you know, you go a little bit further out west and you go to the islands, and I mean, you know, Joe's a large man, Coach Salavea. I saw a couple of guys out there that, you know, looked like they ate Joe. You know, they were really big human beings. So I'm excited about, you know, that next step in recruiting the big guys.
Right, left, Matt.
You lost your recruiting coordinator and 2 assistant coaches. How did that impact your ability to recruit as a staff? How did you kind of manage that? And then kind of what's the status on the recruiting coordinator and the receivers coach?
You know, ironically, we were talking about that and was an item in yesterday's team meeting that in college football, and I guess now in any kind of football, maybe sports in general, transition, like it's part of it. It really, it's almost like, hey, this is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. A year ago, the transition was difficult because a year ago, as we were assistant coaches, we recruited position specifically only. So when there was a loss at that position, well, a complete relationship with a certain position group was lost as well, and that was hard to resuscitate. And this year's approach was that multiple guys were assigned to certain recruits to make sure that should something like that happen, that the relationships were still strong enough to be able to maintain, you know, that trust and the integrity of everything that was, you know, told to that family in a household. But transition is what it is. It happens, and like we mentioned to the team, it's you know, guys come and go, coaches come and go, and players come and go sometimes, and it's all about the guys in the locker room. It always has been. It always will be. And I think when people come and go, you wish them the best, and certainly you take what you've learned from them and move on, and you welcome the new ones and get ready to learn some more. So. I know those are really good guys, you know, both Court and Coach Field, and we're in the process of, you know, replacing those guys as well.
From middle, James.
Mario, a couple questions on geography that you hit on. One, this is a year with only one in-state recruit. When did you know it's also a year that's split down from an in-state talent perspective? When did you recognize that it was going to be a year you'd have to go out of state more? First, second, when you speak outside the region, there's 5 M's. I know you know this: Miami, Mobile, Memphis, Metro Atlanta, and Dallas Metroplex. You didn't hit.
You didn't
Texas.
mention Medford. I mean, what's going on here, man?
What is your approach to recruiting in the state of Texas when you open there next season? You have a couple of Big 12 opponents that 2020 and 21 recruits could start to play those kind of teams in that region, and does that impact how you look at the wide receiver position, the coaching position, and where that might fit in recruiting and their expertise?
It certainly does. That's a great question. You know, I was just referring to the sheet right here: 12 from California, 2 from Hawaii, 2 Florida, and then 1 each from Oregon, Colorado, Alabama, North Carolina, Tennessee, Washington, and Georgia. So we spread out pretty good once we got past, you know, those first 14, you know, those first 16 selections, I should say, including Colorado and Oregon. So this is, for us, we mine and cultivate the West Coast. And then when we go nationally, we cherry pick it. Okay, we identify the guys we feel these are our championship Oregon football players, student athletes, the right kind of guy. We try to recruit areas where we have a familiarity, because at the end of the day, with the limited amount of contacts, you have to have solid information as it relates to the student athlete. You don't want to select an unknown, right? Because once you sign a guy, that guy's yours, and you want to bring the right kind of people to your program. And then you want to narrow down your scope as well. I think if you try to spread yourself out too thin across the country, you just can't get there all the time. You can't get there like we do out on the West Coast. So, but being that, the state of Texas, we haven't done much there in the past couple of cycles. And like you mentioned, it is an area where we're going to be playing. It is an area with an abundance of talent and great high school coaching. Something like that always figures into a coaching hire. Is it the deal breaker one way or the other? I don't know. It depends how tight the race is between a couple of candidates, but it's certainly something that's looked at and always taken into consideration. I mean, it's college football. There's, talent acquisition is going to be a huge part of it. It's going to be that, and you have to have the relationships, and you have to have the know-how and the tireless mentality to be able to bring the right type of guys back home.
I'm sure you've seen the amount of player movement that's gone on through the transfer portal over the course of
I mean, the 2,200 people on the transfer portal? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that seems like a pretty big number, yeah. Okay. But looking at how much more movement, I guess, there is with the portal being enacted, does that kind of change how you looked at players, coming in through this cycle, knowing that there is 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, they have that ability to move maybe a little bit easier than before?
I think the first thing that sticks out to me when I think transfer portal is that maybe for the first time in college football, coming in second place may actually be first place down the road. Does that make sense? Or maybe it didn't work out, but later a player decides to change his mind and come back. We're not heavily using the portal. I could see where teams use it, and I think it all depends on what happens on your end on the transfer portal too. If you have an exodus of 12, 15 guys, but you can only sign a certain amount, well, that certainly changes the way you approach it. Now you've got to do just about everything. You've got to sign your max. You've got to have qualified walk-ons put on scholarship. You've got a blue shirt guy so that they count towards next year's cycle just to get to your 85. So, you'd like to always be between 82 and 85. You don't want to be below that. I mean, once you go over 3 players lost, it's pretty significant in my opinion. You're looking at depth, scout teams, special teams or whatnot. So it's all subjective. It really is. And as of right now, if we didn't hit on these guys at these positions, now mind you, of course, they got to come in and play and produce. If we didn't hit on these like I thought we would, then we'd probably be a little bit more active. We are still looking and finding the right ones. A lot of these guys we've recruited our previous places, but man, I think it's something that it's going to take a few years to, it's free agency, but at the same time, it's not. It's and we're still figuring it out. We still got to get the right ones, no matter where they come from, right? So.
Back middle title.
Coach Wilson has coached with numerous guys on your guys' staff before. How much did that kind of help with him, kind of coming in the middle of this hectic period and kind of finding his feet with you guys?
Well, he was highly recommended from within and from the outside as well. I thought just the most important thing for us is something that I learned when I was younger and was put through the recruit or the interview process myself, is that you got to know what you're talking about. And you've got to have a great presence about you, and you've got to be able to be a guy that fits in and can contribute in every way possible to the room itself, to the culture of the program, the players you're coaching, game day, all that stuff. And he was endorsed by a lot of people, but he won it. He was on a list independently of his connections and ties to people here at the University of Oregon. And the part that to me that was really special about him is that he's just a teacher. He's listed as a linebackers coach. He might coach inside. He might coach outside. He can coach the secondary. There's a lot of versatility in him because he is a teacher. To me, he's the kind of guy that if you said, hey, I need you to coach tight ends, he could pop over and do that. Now, we're not going to do that. But what I'm saying is it's very much, I admire what the Bill Belichicks of the world do. I do. I admire what, guys like Nick Saban too, how they find teachers that are great people and passionate recruiters and place them in situations where they can bring a lot to the program. Okay. But I'm really fired up about him. And as I was traveling and recruiting, I almost felt like, he had an advertising agency up and down, the coastline. every school I'd stop is, yeah, you got to talk to Ken Wilson. You got to talk to Ken Wilson. I'm like, all right, are you his agent or something? Is there a fee that comes with this? So, but we're really happy that he is here. And, you know, they ran a defense which has given us problems. You know, it's a really difficult scheme, which I think it's something that everybody's looking at. As you know, their former coordinator goes over to Oklahoma as well, was at Ohio State before that. You know, what they do with their stems, their movements and whatnot, there's some stuff in there that, you know, could be very useful to us on both sides of the ball.
Middle, Jared. Microphone right behind you. Oh, sorry.
So, Coach, how many more young men do you anticipate signing, if any? And will that depend somewhat on when you get a new wide receiver coach? With that, a couple of guys maybe might be waiting for that.
So, what are you trying to say?
What are you going to say?
I think we all want, you know, to get always the best recruits that we can, and processes have been expedited to see if it matches up, get the right guy for the job, while at the same time satisfying the curiosity of prospects that may be looking at our program. It hasn't quite matched up like that, and that being said, the prospect or the candidates that are in place are all excellent. I feel like we could hire any one of them and we'd have success. Taking a little bit longer just because it's a really tight race, and I'd rather get it right so that it affects everyone than to try to hurry it and maybe not do as well. But now that being said, I feel confident in all the ones that we have vetted a lot. So, for example, if I'm in, gosh, where did I land? What was it? Atlanta? No, Miami, Jacksonville, Mobile, Hammond, Louisiana. You know, to drive over New Orleans to try to meet with someone for a few hours before the 5 a.m. leaves, you know. We did all those things. So we never slowed down recruiting, and we never were delinquent on trying to speed up the pace of trying to get a hire. And we did it. I mean, we flew in and drove in packs and interviewed and found conference rooms and brought film and had guys teach and just put guys through the ringer. So we feel good about the process. It would be great to have one right now, but we're so close to hiring one in the next, you know, few days or a week that we feel good at where it's at.
We got time for 2 more. We're going to go Eric, then Matt.
Yeah, if my math is right, I think you guys are now over the scholarship limit right now. I'm just curious on kind of what steps and how you guys maneuver to get back under that. And then I think 6 enrolled now. I'm curious how many you're expecting for spring ball too.
We're expecting 4 to 5 more to be here in April and catch the last 10, 11 practices. We'll start practice, I believe, on March 7th. Is that correct? March 7th. And we'll hit about 5 practices, maybe 6 before we go on spring break. You have that week, and then you got spring break. Then we'll come back and wrap up the rest with the coaches clinic and with the spring game. In terms of signing where we are numbers wise, that's something we figure out. You know, that's all educated calculations that we do as it relates to the roster and what we feel is going to happen down the line. So we have a pretty good formula for it, and as that thing works itself out, we'll certainly update everyone.
Last question, Matt. On the left.
It seemed like over half your class came for either a spring game or the Saturday Night Live, and many of those did both. How important is that just to build this overall class moving forward, and just how do you take into that effect of this class?
I think it's what we all know. If you come to Oregon, you get on campus, there's a magic to it. There is, you know, it's you hear about it and people talk about it, you read about it, but until you set foot on campus, you don't realize how strong and how powerful it is. And when guys got here, they had a powerful experience and a genuine one, and they came back for more and had it again, and it reconfirmed a lot of things. And a lot of these guys came on what we call a nuts and bolts day, you know, class, summer school, workouts, running, no crowd, right? Beautiful summer day, whatnot, but no one cheering on the stadium. And then they came back for a game and witnessed what Autzen does, and we all know what Autzen is, right? Best place, best fans, and what does it do? It confirms everything for the guys that we were recruiting. So we certainly want to get people around us as much as possible. We want them around our families as much as possible because they have to see the investment that we have, that it's complete. I mean, utterly 100% invested, and I think that works best for us.